Your high standards are probably one of the main reasons your clients love working with you. They know that when something comes from you, it's going to be right, it's going to be on time, and it's going to be thorough. It's done the way it should be done. But here's the question I want you to really think about today. What happens to those standards if you're not able to be in the room? Because if the answer is your standards slip or you don't know, that means that your standards aren't actually an asset yet. They are really a bottleneck. And today we're going to talk about how to change that. Welcome back to Leveraging Operations and Leadership. I'm your host, Tanya D. Harrison, founder of Signal Partners. And I really want to talk about how you can change your standards from being a bottleneck into really being something that is going to free you, where you are not going to restrict yourself and your team and keep you in the day-to-day or the weeds of your business. Whether you are a solopreneur who's thinking about getting some help or a leader of a small team who's too deep in it to work, this episode is going to help you move past it. First things first, we want to talk about some of the signs. So how do you know that your standards are holding you back? Your standards are causing you to be the bottleneck, right? A business owner isn't a problem. The problem is that the standards live in your head. That's the biggest problem. And you haven't figured out how to take those standards and now make them a part of your processes and a part of your systems and a part of your business, so that whether you are in the room or not, people are able to rise to the occasion and they are able to deliver based on the standards that you have. And this is whether it is a W-2 employee or a contractor, you still need to have standards. Same thing like when we talked about values. Values don't go out the window because you're working with a contractor. They are still very much a part of the relationship and they need to be included. Same thing with standards. Now, I want to walk you through some of the signs where your standards are a bottleneck instead of an asset. One sign is you're involved in everything because stepping back feels risky. And you're involved in everything not because it requires your skill set, but because you are extremely uncomfortable with not being involved. And this happens even if you haven't tested it out to see if somebody can do it or not. It just may be a feeling that you have. Or another sign could be that you've thought about handing something off, maybe even started to hand something off, but you talk yourself out. And I'm going to say these words because I hear them all the time. It just feels easier to do it myself. I hear this so many times from founders. And while that may be the case if you only have to do it once, but if it's something that you repeatedly do, then you need to figure out, which we're going to talk about, how you embed these standards across your organization so that you're not constantly being the one that does it, right? At some point, we want to move ourselves out of the weeds, out of the day-to-day, and start leading. Another sign is when you picture someone else doing one of your core tasks, your gut reaction is, but they won't do it. And that may be the case if you haven't given them the tools to do it right, meaning you haven't defined what the standard is and they have access to that. Another sign is, this is another one I hear a lot. I used to think this as well. Clients expect you specifically, and part of you aren't sure if that's a compliment or a trap, but I'm going to tell you it's a trap. Because if they only trust you, then what does that mean for your capacity to grow? That means that you're always going to have to do it. Now, we'll have a separate conversation about some of the things that you let go versus some of the things that you may want to keep depending on where you are in business. But when you have your standards in place, you're going to find it easier to allow other people to do things, even if it's client facing. And like I said, that's a totally episode that we are going to have, and that's going to be a really great conversation. If any of that sounds familiar, and I'm guessing at least one or two of them hit close to home, if not all of them, here's what's really going on under the surface. And this is true whether you have a team right now or you're still doing it all yourself. There's a conflict of high standards versus undocumented standards. Having high standards mean you know what good looks like, and that is great. That's a strength. And that's what your clients are paying for. Having undocumented standards mean you're the only one who knows what good looks like. And that is a bottleneck. And that's not a strength. That is a single point of failure, and that's what we want to fix. When standards only live in your head, you become the quality control system for your entire business by default. And that's because no one else can do it. So you haven't designed what needed to be designed. Nobody assigned you that role. I just want to remind you, that's something that you took on, right? You declared that yourself, and it just happened because no one else has access to the standard. And this is why delegation can feel hard. It's not that the person you're handing it off to isn't capable. We may not even know if they're capable or not, because you may not have ever tested the waters. It's that they don't have the information they need to meet your standard because it's not documented. It's in your head. You haven't given it to them. So that is huge. And for solopreneurs who haven't hired yet, this is also why you keep talking yourself out of getting help, because getting help requires explaining what you want. And explaining what you want requires knowing what you want in detail, clearly enough to put it into words, which brings us back to more work. But it's work that you do one time versus continuing to do it over and over again. The fix to all of this is not about lowering your standards. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not going to tell you to accept good enough. We have enough good enough, bare minimum in this world. We don't need to add to it. The fix is getting your standards out of your head and into your systems and processes in your business so that they can exist and be upheld without requiring you to be present for every single thing. And so that you have a consistent way of doing things if you are a solopreneur. Now I want to talk about things that you want to document so your standards are clear and they just become ingrained in your business. First of all, you need to know what the definition of done is. And when I say done, I mean done to your standard. You need a clearly defined definition written down for the task that's being completed. Think about that mental checklist that you go through in your head, because it happens, right? So if you're doing a proposal or a project plan, there's certain things that you are making sure that are done before you actually say, this is complete and this is done to my standard. If you're putting together a report, there are certain elements that it has to have, and you're checking for that and you're mentally doing it. And sometimes we're doing things and don't even realize we're doing it because we do it over and over again. So you're going to force yourself to stop and document those things. You're going to write it down. You're going to make it explicit. It's clear. Done should mean the same thing every single time for every person involved, including you. Whether you're doing the task, you delegate it to somebody to do it, it should look the same way. It should be at the same standard. Also, if you've identified common mistakes, and these could be mistakes that you've made, or if you have somebody helping you, mistakes that they've made that you've had to fix. Document those. Make sure that they become a part of the process so that other people behind you and them do not make the same mistakes. Stop fixing it repeatedly and start documenting it one time. So if you've already fixed it twice, you don't need to fix it a third time. You need to document it and then have it there for you and whoever comes behind you to be able to execute this at the level that you want it to be done. Another thing is your non-negotiables. Every business owner has absolutes that they've never said out loud, or you may have, but you assume everybody already know. And this could be the time it takes to respond to clients, the tone that you use with clients, how a proposal is formatted. I love templates because it makes my life easier, and then it also makes delegation a whole lot easier. So all of these things, how a deliverable is organized before it goes out. If it's ever made you cringe when it wasn't done right, that's a non-negotiable. But make sure it is written down, it is detailed, it is clear. Saying something like professional, make sure it's professionally done, that's not a standard. You have to be clear. For instance, I want clients to be responded to within 1 business day. That's clear. If I get an email on Thursday at 8 a.m., then by Friday, the next business day, that it needs to be responded to. That's clear. There's no room for negotiation or I didn't know. Because professional means different things to different people. Professional could be 3 days. Professional could be 2 days. You have to make sure that you are explaining what it is for your business and how you want it. This is your business. Another thing is if you have examples of your work, and this is why I love templates. So if you are submitting proposals, you can have templates for that. But think about some of the work that you've done and sharing what good looks like. If it could be an email to a client, a deliverable that you're proud of, make sure you are sharing that. And if you can create a template for certain things, then make sure you're creating templates. That is going to help when you hire, but it's also going to help you from recreating the wheel every single time. And then the last thing is decision rules. So when something unexpected comes up mid-task, you want to be able to say, okay, if this happens, then if X happens, then Y should happen. And make sure you are documenting the logic. And this is something that you will continue to do over time. As things come up, you're going to update this document. An example is if you work with clients and in the beginning, this is something that I had to work with. If a client request comes in and it changes the scope, how do you respond to that? So you want to have a document that says, here's what we do. And it shouldn't be you having to get on the phone every single time or you having to send the email every single time. There should be something that's documented that says what happens. Or say, for instance, if a deadline is at risk, you may have it documented that says who gets notified and when it gets notified. Like what happens? What are we going to do to rectify this situation? So think about those decision rules. And again, you may not get it all in one session. I'm not saying that you need to document all of these this week. I'm not saying that you need to document all of these for every process. This is something that may be something that you work towards, but start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. What I want you to do is, right, because I like giving you homework, start with one. Pick one task, one thing that you do either the most often, or if you have a team, it could be something that you have seen the most errors with, or it is the most critical, like it's a core process. Pick something and build your definition of done. Here's what done looks like. Here's what the non-negotiables are. Here's what examples of the standard looks like. And that's enough to start, because once your standards are documented, even partially, something starts to shift. Whether you are a solopreneur or you have a team, something starts to shift. And one of the things that shifts is you're more confident in what you're putting out. You're more confident in delegating if you have a team. I want to encourage you to do this because it's time for you to stop being the quality control department and design the quality control system, but stop doing it. Those are two fundamentally different roles. Doing the quality versus setting up the system and then stepping back from it. One of them is going to keep you in the weeds, and the other one lets you lead from above. And at a certain point, you have to be able to lead from a distance. For small team leaders, your team is going to stop asking you the same questions repeatedly, and you should see a reduction in the number of errors. If you are still seeing the same error over and over again, it may be an opportunity to go back and clarify some things again. If you're seeing it from one specific person, it's an opportunity to have a conversation with them to find out what's missing. If you are a solopreneur, you stop talking yourself out of getting help, because now you have something to hand off. It's not just tasks, but the context and the criteria. Someone needs to actually do the task right, to do the process right. And getting help becomes possible because you've done the work of making your standards visible. And even when it's just you and your business, you have something that you could repeatedly do the same way over and over again. So you're not reinventing the wheel. And all around, it just makes delegation easier and it makes it work smoother. This is what is going to make your first hire worth it, or your next hire. This is also what's going to help your team to evolve. I truly believe that most people want to do a good job. And now you're giving them the tools to do a good job. Now you make them happy. The goal is not to lower your standards. The goal is to build a business where your standards exist and they can be upheld without you having to be present and in the middle of every single thing. That's the shift. That's what we're building towards. All right, that's a wrap on episode 67. If this episode resonated with you, I want you to do one thing before you close out. Share it with another leader who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, leave us a review. It genuinely helps more leaders find these conversations. All right. Be sure to check out our resource, which is the GAP Guide. I'm sure you are going to find that extremely helpful. It is a free download. So definitely check that out, and I will see you next week.